I want to welcome everybody to the International Elephant Foundation's Conservation Chat. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Julie Bates, and I'm the Donor Relations Manager at IEF. And also on the call with us, we have Chase Ledoux, who is our Special Projects Manager. We have Sarah Conley, who is our Director of Conservation. And we also have Deborah Olson on the line, who is our Executive Director. So that kind of tells what staff is on the call. And I also have a few housekeeping notes for everybody. If you don't mind, as we go through the presentation, to please keep your microphones on mute and keep your cameras off, because we have a lot of people tuning in from different parts of the world, and having those cameras off kind of helps us save that bandwidth. Also, just so you know, we are recording this call. So we can send it out to people who weren't able to make it here to the live presentation. As we go through the presentation, if you have any questions for our presenter, we encourage you to put those questions in the chat, and we will try to get to those as we get to the end of his presentation. So I think that kind of covers everything. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Conley, and she is going to tell you about our presenter for today.
Thanks, Julie. Hello, everyone. Today we are joined by Christopher Powles, the founder of the Mount Elgon Foundation. He is the grandson of the founder of the Mount Elgon National Park. Chris has a lifelong connection with Mount Elgon, and it's a truly unique landscape. He and his family have supported archaeological research there, which is an extinct volcano straddling the Kenya-Uganda border. It is home to a unique population of elephants that travel up to 160 meters, or approximately 525 feet for those of us in the US, underground to dig mineral-rich volcanic rock. This unique and unusual mining culture seen in elephants prompted the formation of the Mount Elgon Elephant Project, which works to conserve and understand that incredible natural heritage. IEF is a proud supporter of this work this year, and we are so excited to welcome Chris to today's conservation chat. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Right, well, thank you, Sarah, for that kind introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. What I'll be talking mostly about is the Mount Elgon Elephant Project, which is a project within the long-established and highly respected East African Wildlife Society, a conservation NGO based in Nairobi, Kenya. But I will also be talking about fascinating archaeological work connected with the elephants undertaken on Mount Elgon by National Museums of Kenya. And then there is the Mount Elgon Foundation, of which I am chair, a charity established here in the UK to fundraise internationally to support Mount Elgon. And then briefly, I must give thanks to my brother Stephen Powles, who's put together most of this presentation. So, Mount Elgon. Mount Elgon is a forgotten place. It is under-visited, under-researched, and underprotected, and under almost anything else you can think of, which is so wrong. It's the most extraordinarily fascinating, beautiful, and amazing place that I hope by the end of this presentation you will all agree with me must be better protected. And the first thing that is extraordinary about Mount Elgon is this cave mining culture and behavior of its elephants. So here you see this extraordinary image of elephants in Kittim Cave. It is taken from an amazing bit of footage by the BBC Natural History Unit. And at the end of this presentation, I will give the link to where you can see the full 9 minutes. And I strongly recommend you go and watch that, because it is the most extraordinary behavior. But it's not the only extraordinary, amazing thing about Mount Elgon. Before we began our work, it was unknown, or virtually unknown to the outside world, but completely unknown to Western media and Western science. And it's not just Kittim Cave where the elephants mine, but there's this vast network of caves across Mount Elgon, 55 that we've documented so far on the Kenya side, and we're still counting. There's still a small area to explore. And then we're only just beginning on the Uganda side. So by the time we finished, I believe we will have found over 100 elephant caves, and how this vast culture of mining by the largest land mammal on the planet has remained virtually unknown in a place like Kenya with all of its wildlife biologists and wildlife conservationists is quite extraordinary. Next, archaeology. When you think of archaeology and East Africa, you think of the hot, dry, dusty, low areas. You think of Turkana. You think of Oligosyli. You think of Olduvai Gorge. You don't think of high montane areas with their huge precipitation, dense forests, and acidic volcanic soils that are non-conducive for the preservation of organic remains. Well, please excuse me, think again. Mount Elgon hosts one of the most prolific mid to late Stone Age archaeological sites in the whole of East Africa, courtesy of the elephants. Zoopharmacognosy, the study of how animals self-medicate. Well, there's a large body of peer-reviewed scientific literature that proves the great apes self-medicate with plants. They're pretty intelligent animals, the great apes. Well, excuse me, so are elephants. So if the great apes are doing this, why not the elephants? There is a very strong spoken tradition amongst the people of Mount Elgon that their elephants do exactly this. And we have documented that. It's been peer-reviewed, and it will be published in a proper scientific journal in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So our elephants on Mount Elgon not only have this culture of mining, they also have a culture of self-medication. So that's pretty interesting too. Then the last thing, hopefully, to grab your attention, Uganda. As you will learn in a moment, the Kenya-Uganda border bisects Mount Elgon. And on the Uganda side, the elephants once roamed freely, and we will never know how many there were, certainly hundreds, and very possibly a few thousand. But then in the 1970s, they were entirely exterminated. They were all killed, or possibly a few of them were driven into Kenya. And to our knowledge, there have been no verified reports of Mount Elgon's elephants returning to Uganda since then, until July 2022, when 2 of our scouts tracked 4 elephants crossing the Uganda border from Kenya. They didn't stay long, they didn't go far, and there weren't very many of them, but they popped in, and they've been doing that again on several occasions, these little investigatory movements. And what we believe from elsewhere in Africa where this behavior is seen, they've been looking to see if it's good territory for them to return to. And then on July 14th last year, poof, somewhere between 60 and 100 elephants returned to Uganda, and 2 of them had satellite tracking collars, so we know exactly where they went and how long for. So they went almost 10 kilometers into Uganda for 47 days. And now today we believe there are 4 herds amounting to about 175 elephants. So this raises a terrifically exciting opportunity, which could be a huge conservation win for elephants, for Uganda, and for our work, if we can get those elephants to repopulate the entire 1,100 square kilometers of former high montane elephant territory in Mount Elgon. So, however, some introductions. This is me as a little child on the left, and my slightly older brother. So we've been involved with Mount Elgon since childhood. And I'll also be introducing the rest of the team. I'll then talk a little bit about where Mount Elgon is, what it is, and something of the other flora and fauna. A little bit on the people, particularly focusing on the archaeology, but we don't have much time or enough time to talk about recent and present people. Then we get into the star of the show, the elephants and their geophagia behavior, and then a little bit on the self-medication. And then the threats to the elephants and the mountain, the conservation work that we're doing, and then a little bit about Uganda as well. And then hopefully we'll have time for some Q&A. As Sarah kindly said, I'm the grandson of the founder and the first warden of Mount Elgon National Park. So I've got a deep personal Mount Elgon heritage. I'm not a professional conservationist, although I did read zoology at the University of Oxford. But no fear, we have very, very good high quality conservationists involved. Dr. Zeke Davidson set up our program. At the time, he was the Kenya country director for the Zoological Society of London. He said we had to have exceptionally good project management and data skills. And he recruited Lisbeth Mate and Clarine Kigoli in those two, or for those two reasons. And they remain with us to this day. We also have 18 scouts patrolling the mountain, 7 people who work on a water project, and then a field officer and a field assistant. We also have 3 other trustees who also have deep Mount Elgon heritage, particularly Emmanuel, whose ancestors since time immemorial have lived on Mount Elgon in the caves, and then Aidan and Anthony as well, who have a deep personal connection from childhood with Mount Elgon. And then our key supporters, not least of which International Elephant Foundation, who I thank again for their kind support. So Mount Elgon, as I say, is bisected by the Kenya-Uganda border, so the far west side of Kenya, the far east side of Uganda. The statistic I particularly like on this slide is that in terms of its footprint, it is the biggest freestanding volcano in the world. So it's a pretty big place. Once upon a time, the geologists say it would have dwarfed even Mount Kilimanjaro. It's got a huge caldera at the top, and when you look down into it, you think you're looking into the Garden of Eden. Quite spectacularly beautiful place. Mount Elgon is characterized by these great volcanic glyphs that you see everywhere, and also by its caves. And here's a particularly beautiful cave, Makingeni, from the outside, and then also from the inside. Now, this is a pretty big cave, and to give you an idea of the scale, if you could maneuver a jumbo jet to get there, it wouldn't quite fit, but it's pretty close. So pretty big cave. Then you have smaller, pretty beautiful caves. This one with this high window where the elephants go a lot. You can see some elephant dung there. Then this one high up on the mountain in dense, unspoiled, untouched indigenous forest. This one low down in the national park. And then this very special one, Chetnadil Cave. Special for 2 reasons. First, as you approach the cave, you have this high wall. And in this one high wall approaching this cave, so much of the story of Mount Elgon unfolds. So as you look up, you see this boulder. That's a boulder thrown out by one of these huge volcanic eruptions. You look up to the left, you see some fossilized wood. So the forests were blasted by this, by one of the eruptions, and you see a lot of fossilized trees and timber. Then if you look more closely, you can see that it's set in this rock full of these little fragments held together by a soft volcanic ash. So basically the mountain erupted with a huge amount of ash that blasted the forest, created the fossils, and this is that agglomerate layer. Then go back to the boulder and you see a funny, strange brown smudge. Now, what this is ancient people revered eland, and they painted them a lot. They painted the head, the neck, the legs in white. The white does no longer survives, but the body that's painted in brown does. So if you see this very characteristic shape, you know it's ancient human rock art representing elands. And there's this as you walk into Chetnal Cave. Then bring your eyes down and you see this strange smooth rock. Well, what this is a rock that's been scratched by generations of elephants coming to this cave. So there you get evidence of the elephants. And then take your eyes down further, and you see a hole going into the agglomerate layer where one of the ancient old bits of timber that fossilized have eroded away, and very often used by birds to nest in and other animals. And here in this instance, you see a little lizard. So that's a nice introduction to much of what makes Mount Elgon special. I'll say a little bit about the flora and fauna, but not very much because we don't have enough time really for that. But just briefly on the ecological zones, you've got hugely rich, fertile plains below the mountain that support these vast big farms, but also local small holdings. And then as you come out of the plains and into the forest, you have this immensely biodiverse, hugely rich lower forest. And then as you go up a bit, you're entering the Podo zone and then the bamboo zone. And here's a beautiful stand of podos. And some of these are huge. So some of them are 100 feet or more. This particular one named Chief Cassis needs 8 people holding hands to get all the way around. And it is huge. As I said, 30 to 40 meters if you think in meters, or well over 100 feet if you think in feet. And then as you go up, you get into the bamboo zone, and often that mixed with the podos, which is an area the elephants particularly like. And then if you go higher still, the forest starts to give way, and you get more open grassland, and then you get up into the Afro-Alpine zone. If any of you are gardeners, you'll recognize these as red hot pokers. And then you get these bizarre giant groundsels and giant lobelias. So it's a bizarre sort of lunar landscape up there. And then coming back down, here's a lovely male bushbuck that my brother was able to photograph. And then the monkeys. A characteristic sound of Mount Elgon are the colobus monkeys. Yeah, when you're walking through the forest and that sound drifts across Mount Elgon, is quite special. And then you get the bush pigs and the giant forest hogs and the hyrax, and then the smaller cats. The only big cat on Mount Elgon are leopards, but they're very difficult to photograph. And then a huge profusion of bird life. But again, not enough time to go into that, but we'll just play you this, again, very characteristic sound from Mount Elgon. And then again, a profusion of insect life as well. And then the bats. So in the caves, you get the big fruit-eating bats, and this is a large colony of them in Kitten Cave, I believe. And then the very much smaller insect-eating bats. And Steve, my bro, captured these amazing images of the fruit bats coming out of, in fact, it was Makingeni Cave, I believe. Uh, and now moving on then, a little bit about the archaeology and the ancient people. So going back to Chepnilol Cave. So I said earlier that it was a very special cave for more than one reason, and here's the second reason. So yeah, nice comfortable sized cave with a nice flat floor, a black ceiling from thousands and thousands of years of fires, a waterfall providing instant water supply, an amazingly rich forest to get all the food you could possibly want, and then evidence of perhaps more recent, but still old people living at the back of the cave. And then there was the rock art that we mentioned earlier. And if you go inside, there's more rock art, but of a different nature. This is like a huge thumbprint with a fainter one to the left. So lots of evidence of human involvement in this cave over time. And my brother Stephen and uncle Peter Powles, particularly my uncle, remembered from childhood seeing strange stone carved bits of stone in the floor of these caves. So he went to National Museums of Kenya and offered to take their archaeologists to the mountain and investigate this. And to cut a long story short, they found one of the most prolific mid to late Stone Age archaeological sites in the whole of East Africa in the mouth of Chepnilol Cave. What it is, it was a manufacturing site for ancient tools where ancient people would take a couple of cores and they'd chip away at one by the other, creating lots of little flakes until you had just the right shape on one core. You then give it a big hit and hopefully off drops your arrowhead or your meat cleaver or whatever it is. Most of the nearly 3,000 artifacts that we dug out of here are the sort of off flakes, but some of them were the stone tools or maybe strange ceremonial things or what have you. And here the archaeologists are doing their work. But it's not just Chetnil where you get fascinating archaeology. Some of the very best rock art in the whole of East Africa is in the western foothills of Mount Elgon at Kakapel. And not only do you get this extraordinary rock art there, it's also a site of archaeological digs, which evidence how there was this spread of farming so the change from foraging to farming is evidenced at this location through these archaeological dig or this archaeological dig that you see at the bottom right there. So then moving on to more recent people, unfortunately we don't have time to talk much about that, but I thought I'd just acknowledge that it is a significant conservation issue and human issue as well. And there's lots of things that we could talk about at great length. But yeah, here's a hut lived in by one of our scouts, living a very traditional life up on the mountain, except he's decided to use his wages to buy a couple of solar panels. So there's a nice contrast of ancient way of living and more recent. And then moving on, as I say, to the star of the show, the elephants. Here are a couple who actually had a bit of a dust up in the national park. But what we need to focus on is at least to begin with, is Kittim Cave. So here it is, and pick out that person there. That gives you a sense of the scale of the cave. It starts, as you can see on the left, and the cave ends quite a distance to the right of that person, but the top of the mouth of the cave collapsed. And so that person is walking over that and then is going to descend down into the cave. To the left, it didn't, and that is where the elephants find their way in. And then they come into the cave, typically at night, but if they do come in in the daytime, it's even dark then, a third of the way in. So obviously at night, the full distance, but in the daytime, the final 2/3 of the way, they find their way through the darkness to the back of the cave, which is 150, 160 meters deep. And then here at the back, what do you find? You find these strange black marks in the wall of the cave. And if you look closely at them, they're the width of an elephant's tusk. And what's going on is the elephants are digging with their tusks to get at the salt. But even if they don't do that, and this is another cave, a remote cave in the far west, they will just eat the salt off the floor of the cave. This is a series of camera trap stills put together to form a little bit of a stop motion video. And if you watch very carefully, just watch the baby, that tiny baby from that age is already learning to eat salt. And he or she will kneel down any second to just eat. There you go, eat the salt before they wander off. So what is it? What is this mining, salt-eating business? Well, if you're a carnivore, your food comes ready salted. You get your sodium, your magnesium, your potassium, your iodine, whatever it might be, by eating flesh. If you're a herbivore, it's not so easy. So if you're a herbivore walking the plains of East Africa, you will go to these salt licks or water holes with salty water. But if you're on Mount Elgon, there's this dense forest that prevents you from getting at the ground. The rainfall is this huge rainfall that leaches the minerals from the soil, and it's difficult to get that salt. So they go to these areas where the ashlar is exposed. And so basically, over geological time, you've had these big eruptions, as I described earlier, of the ash capped off by the lava, where you then get rivers coming down the mountain, forming waterfalls, brushing away the vegetation, the splashback softening the ash layer. Then over evolutionary time in those locations, the elephants, and who knows what species before them, have dug into that ash layer for the minerals that they need. And as they do so, elsewhere in Africa, where you have similar behavior, you get a receding cliff face. But here on Mount Elgon, you have the hard lava cap, and that holds. So they excavate caves instead of creating this receding cliff face. So then, over archaeological time, humans have found these caves, and our work shows fascinatingly that it may well be in response to historic climate change. So the plains of East Africa have gone through periods of dry heat and more lush, wetter periods. And as there's been historic warming, we believe the evidence from Chetnarol shows that ancient humans have come up the mountain as a refuge. And they've found these beautiful elephant caves with their soft floor from all of the elephant dung and what have you. And then the elephants have continued to use the cave to build up strata that one can then do archaeology in from their elephant dung. And then bringing the story to the present day, we have then come along with National Museums of Kenya to do this fascinating archaeology, and then have decided that we wanted to test this theory about these waves of occupation coming up and down the mountain in response to historic climate change by doing digs in other caves. So we've gone exploring the mountain for other caves to do archaeology. And what did we find? We found this extraordinary network of elephant caves. So the archaeology has brought us back to the elephants. So that's quite a fun intertwining story between the elephants and the humans. Now, just one slide on the elephant self-medication. We're just, as I say, about to publish, so I can't preempt what's about to come out in scientific reports, part of the Springer Nature family of publications. But basically, as I said, and this is one of our scouts in civilian clothes pointing to one of the plants that the elephants eat, both the above ground and the tubers that local people believe for medicinal purposes. And we've documented the local belief, as I say, of quite a number of people across the mountain who have sufficient knowledge of elephants to know what they take as medicine. And that will be published pretty soon. And that will be the first extensive account of how African elephants self-medicate. So we expect it to get quite a lot of publicity. Then moving on to threats and conservation and Uganda. So to understand the conservation and the status of the elephants, one has to understand the politics. There you see the border going through Mount Elgon, slightly more of the mountain on the Uganda side than on the Kenya side. The Uganda side, all national park, the whole lot. The Kenya side, a small strip of national park going up all the ecological zones, with then a lesser protected forest reserve to the north and this huge big one to the south and west. Excuse me, and then the high up nature reserve. The threats, deforestation is crucial and is starting, way back in the colonial time when a lot on the Kenya side of the forest was cut both for farms and for commercial plantations. But that has continued to the recent day, both on the Kenya side and also on the Uganda side. So deforestation for farming, as I say, historically, but also now, as you walk the forest, sometimes you come across these areas that have been cleared, and people are growing their maize. Whole hillsides have been devastated by the charcoal burners, but we have got on top of that one. Then there is overgrazing, preventing the natural regeneration of the forest. So there are quite a few significant drivers of deforestation. Then another major issue is human-wildlife conflict. This picture is of elephant dung with little bits of maize in it. So the elephant that produced this dung had had a nice meal of someone's hard-grown crops, and that clearly is a very difficult issue and ends in reprisal by the farmers. And that, when we were starting our work, led to a spate of human deaths, which was completely tragic, and some elephant deaths. But more recently, for some reason, that has abated. It was just at the start of when we began, there was this particular nasty series of both human and elephant deaths. Poaching for the ivory trade has historically been a bit of an issue, but far less than elsewhere in East Africa, because Mount Elgon's elephants wear their tusks down. So they only have small ivory. The mining that they do results in them having quite short, stubby tusks, as you can see in this photo. Poaching for bushmeat is a big, serious problem. We've just supported Kenya Wildlife Service to do a huge program of desnaring in the park, and in a very short period of time collected over 200 snares. So we will be repeating that and trying to do more elsewhere. So a very major problem with collapsing wildlife populations, as you'll see in a minute. And then loss of cultural heritage is an issue as well. Here's another cave where we've done archaeological work, and you can see the graffiti that was there already. And then more recently, only in November last year, there was a huge amount of rain, which combined with the deforestation above this cave, led this cave to collapse. So this cave is gone. It's no longer here. So moving on to conservation, the first thing to say is Kenya Wildlife Service. They're here and have been for decades, day in, day out, doing all the conservation work that they do. And I illustrate that with one of their key interventions, this electric fence going around the bottom of the national park. And then the Mount Elgon Elephant Project operations. Here's some scouts in civilian clothes pointing to an elephant in the distance that they've been following. So I'll talk a bit about the scouts. I'll talk about the joint patrols that we do with Kenya Wildlife Service. I'll illustrate the protection work that we do with elephant or with one particular story. Then I'll touch on the more recent development of satellite tracking, which has been so helpful, and then talk about community work, our community engagement and livelihoods. And then I'll end with mention of Uganda. So we have 18 scouts patrolling the mountain. They have mobile phones. On the mobile phone is an app called Smart, and that tracks them from the satellites as they move around. So we know exactly where they've been. And as they come across here, in this case, some human habitation, they press the icon for human habitation. Or if it's an elephant, they press the icon for elephant or a cave or whatever it might be. And so we've built up a huge amount of data, but it's not just data collecting, it's obviously active conservation work done at the same time. The data does, for example, on the bottom left, provide us with hugely useful information. The bottom left heat map shows you a particularly severe area of charcoal burning, which we then focused on, and we put joint patrols in there. And they opened up the charcoal piles, let the oxygen in, the charcoal turns to ash, and that has put a stop to this. The charcoal burners have realized they're onto nothing by charcoal burning in that area because of that behavior or that intervention that we've put in place there. Then top left, this shows you, we didn't put in all of the different species because it would get too busy, but we get data on what wildlife is there. And then a worrying graph on the right showing reduction in wildlife, other wildlife population, not elephants, but other wildlife. And then human activity, and then another graph showing an increase in livestock sightings. The joint patrols, as I said, we've had a significant positive impact on reducing charcoal burning. But what I must say is that it's not a problem solved, it's a problem displaced. The charcoal burners are poor, impoverished people. They have families, they have children, they have wives, they have livelihoods, they need to live their lives. And so what we've actually seen, we believe, is the charcoal now being taken from elsewhere, from basically this place, West Pokot, to the north of Mount Elgon. So sorry, West Pokot. And the demand locally for charcoal is being fulfilled from there. And for those who then can't access their charcoal from there, we've seen a significant increase, we believe, in snaring. So we'll come back to the response to that in due course in a few minutes, but just focusing still on the scouts. Keeping an eye and protecting the elephants is crucial, and there's been a whole series of interventions that we've done. But here's one that's particularly a nice story. So, although it doesn't start well. So the scouts received report from farmers that this elephant was behaving oddly. It wasn't with its herd, it was hanging around humans and cattle and being pretty listless. So the scouts went to investigate, and what did they find? They found that this poor elephant was tied to a 3-meter log. What had happened is this log had had a snare tied to it, set most likely for a buffalo to put its head through. If the nylon rope had been tied to a tree, then it may have snapped and the buffalo could have wandered off. But tied to a log, the log would drag. So when the bushmeat poachers would come for the buffalo, they could follow the drag marks, put the dogs around the front and spear it from behind. But in this case, this poor elephant put its leg in it, and we believe from the drag marks, she then carried or dragged this log for 15 kilometers across the mountain in a desperate attempt to keep up with her herd. And while doing so, that snare cut deep, deep. And here you can see her doing exactly this. That bell in the background is a cow. So the scouts leapt into action. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. And here's another picture of the elephant with the snare. And it's as if she's sort of presenting it to people in a cry for help. We'll never know if that is true, but it just felt like it. And indeed, help did come. The scouts got hold of Kenya Wildlife Service. They got a vet up from the Maasai Mara as rapidly as possible. He had a very, very long, arduous trek into the forest. He reached the elephant just as night was falling in a very thick, dense place, but he was still able to dart it. And you see the dart by the shoulder of the front shoulder of the elephant there, that little white strip. He was then able to remove the snare that had cut deep into her flesh. He then treated the wound, packed it with clay, and applied the antidote. And soon she was up, looking round for the log, and realized she was free and wandered off. And she lives to this day. And not only does she live to this day, within the gestation period of an elephant, she gave birth, and she's given birth a second time since. So there are 3 elephants alive today because of the behavior of those scouts, the action they took. And we asked the scouts who saved her to name her, and they named her Chemu Kung, which in the local language means the limping one. So she does continue to limp to this day, but she does keep up with her herd and she lives a normal elephant life. So that's a lovely example of our protection work. Satellite tracking. So this is a newer thing. So in September 2024, the Mount Elephant Project, who have a very high level of expertise in this, both technologically, but also in terms of the practical effort of darting an elephant, which involves flying helicopters and darting them from the air and coming down and getting the collars on and then the antidote, etc., etc. So quite a business to do it, and huge thanks to Mount Elephant Project. For the first time ever, Mount Elgon's elephants collared. So 3 female elephants, not the matriarchs because you leave them alone, but a senior female in 3 herds were collared. And that's given us important behavior data. It's allowed us to understand their movements, particularly back into Uganda, and you'll see more about that in a moment. And then it also allows interventions, so you can see when they're approaching farmland and alert the farmers. Then moving on to something else the Mara Elephant Project has done for us. They've helped transition our scouts from being in civilian clothes as sort of undercover people within the community to a set of 4 teams in uniform patrolling the mountain as teams, doing much more interventions in terms of conservation work, so much more organized conservation work. and they've put them through their capacity building program down in the Masai Mara. And here are four of our scouts with East African Wildlife Society and Mount Elgon Elephant Project badges. Then community work. So I explained earlier that stamping out the charcoal burning was a problem not solved but displaced. So two interventions that are crucial in that. Community sensitization. So holding meetings with local people, both for adults, here we're supporting Kenya Wildlife Service to do that, and then also in the schools. So we do tree planting and working with the school kids to educate them from an early age. And then there's also livelihood work. The two more established projects are our beehive project and a water project, but we also have a woodlots project. So on the beehives, this drives human-elephant conflict. As the elephants come onto the farms, this is just one single elephant having done a huge amount of damage. Just imagine what a whole herd can do very, very quickly. But there is an answer. And so what we did, so beg your pardon, this is more of the problem. So from the data collected by scouts, we could identify areas of particularly severe crop raiding and human-elephant conflict, which is these white dots. But there is a very interesting solution to this developed by Dr. Lucy King of the Elephant Crisis Fund. She learned from local people in the Samburu area that elephants are terrified of bees, and it is indeed the case. So it's one of the few things that elephants are worried about, because they get stung in their soft places around their eyes, at the ends of their trunks, in their ears, and what have you. And so if you drive up to an elephant in a Land Rover and play the sound of bees, a happy, contented herd of elephant munching away, feeding, immediately changes their behavior. They take up a defensive posture. The young ones come into the middle and they move off very rapidly. So Lucy thought, well, I wonder if we can use this to protect farms. And so down in Savo area, towards the coast in Kenya, where there's been a particularly serious problem of elephants raiding people's crops, she experimented by putting these hives around people's farms connected by wires, and bingo, it solved the problem. So fortunately, she was able to train our people about this and provide the funding. And here we are putting in our own beehive fences on Mount Elgon. And here's one of the farmers, and on the bottom left, or to the left, a cabbage field. The elephants adore cabbages. They go down the lines eating them like sweeties. The 5 farms where we've done this had recurrent elephant incursions before we did this intervention. Since we've done it, in the 3 years since we've done it, there's not been one elephant, not a single elephant incursion onto any of those 5 farms. The farmers have observed the elephants coming up to or coming relatively close, smelling the bees and turning away back into the forest or going to unprotected farms. It also provides alternative income through honey sales. And here we are doing sort of beekeeping training to support the farmers. And then on the honey sales, the Elephant Crisis Fund have generously supported us again to produce what we're calling a coexistence hub, but basically it's a store and a training facility and a honey processing facility. So as I speak, this is not quite finished. So here you can see it's work in progress, but within 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have this all finished and painted, and there'll be a roof over the top, and it'll all be looking good, and the honey processing equipment will be coming in, and hopefully soon we'll be able to send the International Elephant Foundation some cave elephant honey. So moving on, a water project. Again, we're running out of time, so I've only got one slide on this. There's an ancient 100-year-old, 100-plus-year-old system that brought water down the mountain, hugging the contours, to an old coffee farm. The coffee is long gone, and the reservoir where the water came now feeds one of the largest tree seedling nurseries on the mountain. But it got completely silted up. Both the canal, as you see on the sort of top right of the left of those two photos, and on the bottom, the left of those two photos. So we've restored the reservoir, and we're in the process of going up the canal, restoring the canal. And that will have multiple conservation and livelihood benefits, not just for the tree seedling nursery, but there should be enough water for the people living below who are in significant water poverty, and it will create employment and multiple benefits linked to conservation. And we also are proposing then to begin a program of reforestation, beginning either side of this canal, to help mitigate human-elephant conflict in this area and to bring some elephant corridors through here. It will also support the final community project that we're doing, Community Livelihoods Project, a woodlots project. So basically to reduce the pressure on the forest for charcoal and for firewood and for timber construction, we are supporting a local entrepreneur who's an old friend of ours to grow or get farmers to grow woodlots on their farm. So fast-growing trees that can provide both timber and for construction and firewood. So that's the sort of community work, and I'm now going to just finish on Uganda, and I'll have to hurry up as I'm sort of running on a bit here. But yes, the elephant dispersal into Uganda. So they were completely wiped out in Uganda in the 1970s. Elephants have very, very long memories, and to our knowledge, there were no verified instances of elephants returning to Uganda from the 1970s until July 2022, when two of our scouts tracked, there was a group of 4 elephants that came round the electric fence at the top side of the park on the north. They normally would go round there and do crop raiding. These particular 4 elephants continued, and for some reason they went the full length of the forest reserve. They crossed the border and went into Uganda, and they didn't stay long and they didn't go far, and they came back pretty rapidly. But that behavior continued, and it continued on a sort of exploratory basis. And elsewhere in Africa, people who are much more knowledgeable about elephants than I am say this is what elephants do when they're thinking about new areas. They send out these little scouting parties. And when they've decided a place is safe, then bang, they go in numbers. And indeed, in July last year, somewhere between 60 and 100 elephants crossed that northern boundary into Uganda, and one of them had a satellite collar on it. So we know that elephant went 10 kilometers into Uganda and stayed for 47 days. And we know from local people now that there were 4 herds there, amounting to about 175 elephants. So that's pretty interesting, but they're restricted to the northeast corner there. And unfortunately, that area has farmland coming right up to the park. So I'm afraid the elephants are back into their bad ways of crop raiding. And one elephant has been injured. And there's a farmer who's had his entire cabbage patch destroyed, threatening to poison them. So there is an incipient crisis, and we are looking to see what we can do. So watch this space. However, if we are able to get the elephants to recolonize the whole of the Uganda side, and it was all once elephant territory, that would be a huge win for both the elephants, for Uganda, and for our work. And here you see that collared elephant that I referred to a moment ago from a satellite image from Uganda Wildlife Authority. And what I'm going to end on is two images that give real hope for the future for Uganda. So this photo illustrates the first verified elephant birth in Uganda since the 1970s. Off this picture to the right is evidence of the birth that's best not shown. But these four holes here, or three holes, I beg your pardon, are where that mother elephant rammed her tusks into a bank to help her push and deliver her calf. So yes, the first verified elephant birth in Uganda for 50 odd years. And then here, a cave, an ancient old elephant cave. That first red arrow shows ancient old wearing away, the tusk marks over time as the salt evaporates from the surface, they get a bit indistinct. But that is still very definitely a sort of 50-plus-year-old tusking mark. So one of the caves that the elephants used to go to. And then here, fresh, new elephant tusking marks. So the elephants are not only giving birth now in Uganda, but they're also back using their old elephant caves. So this extraordinary culture of mining by these amazing animals is now spreading back into Uganda. Right, a final slide, a couple of calls to action. So that amazing photo at the start of my presentation, which is taken from a 9-minute BBC film clip. Well, to see the full clip, which I do recommend because it is the most extraordinary behavior, please go to our website, go to the publications page of our website, and then scroll down to website links and you'll see it there. And then if you'd like to hear more about us and hear the story unfold, please also go to our website, but go to the Contact Us page, fill out the form, tick the box to receive the newsletter and hit send, and then we'll add you to our database and you'll be able to get all our updates. So thank you very much for listening. And if you do have any questions, I'll be delighted to answer them. I have slightly overrun, Sarah, sorry, but I hope it was worth it.
Absolutely worth it. That was fantastic. You're getting all kinds of accolades in the chat and all kinds of people hearting and celebrating throughout your talk. So thank you. We have a few questions to cover. First, have you seen any evidence of other animals going into these caves using these mineral deposits?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll be in terrible trouble with my brother because it was too long a presentation. I edited out an amazing bit of video he has. Those giant fruit bats that you saw his beautiful photos of. He's even got video of those bats licking the salt. So the bats do it, but also, the antelope go in, the bushbuck, the buffalo. So basically all the herbivores go in.
Wonderful.
So there's lots of animals that do it. And who knows, back in evolutionary time, the predecessors of the elephants may have done it as well.
Absolutely. And have you done soil analysis of inside the caves? Do you know like what specific minerals they're getting or if it's just salt?
Well, we haven't because that bit of work has been done. And if the person who asked the question is really interested, please go to the publications page of our website. And there you will find a proper peer-reviewed scientific article on a very detailed analysis of the salt in Kittim Cave. So yes, that work has been done, but not by us. Well, actually, I'll tell a lie. one of the authors is a key advisor to the Mount Elgon Foundation, Ian Redmond.
Wonderful. Yeah, we saw some of his photos in your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I know you mentioned that the elephants in the region have shorter tusks. Can you go over again why that may be?
It's basically they just wear them down. So you saw the violence of how they go for that rock face. So in the BBC clip that I played at the start, that was pretty powerful movement. So, those elephants are ramming those tusks into the ash layer is a softer rock, but it's still, pretty hard. I've hit it with a hammer and it does take a bit of hitting. So basically, as the elephants push into those salt strata, they wear their tusks down, which has historically been fortunate for them because while there has been ivory poaching on Mount Elgon, and let's not get away from that, it's been less of a draw than elsewhere.
Absolutely. And did the cave that collapsed or the mouth of it that collapsed, did it have a name?
Well, the cave where the mouth collapsed, but the cave survives, is Kittim. The cave that entirely collapsed, or I haven't been there to check, but I'm told by the scouts the entire cave has come down, is Kiptagot, or was Kiptagot Cave.
All right. This is a good question. You've talked a lot about what you guys are currently doing. What's on your sights for the next steps? What conservation projects are on the horizon?
Well, that is a great question. So we're on the Kenya side. This woodlots program, which we're piloting, is the next community-based conservation project, and we do wish to build up our community response to what I described in terms of problems displaced and supporting local people. So that's one aspect of it. The other big thing is Uganda. So we do not have the funding or the management capacity at the moment to work in Uganda. And we're going through a program, or just beginning a program of strategic planning to see if we do enter Uganda, how to do it, how to support our Uganda colleagues, and then how to fund it. So if we can get a good plan, get the right people, get the funding, then we want to go into Uganda.
That would be great. Okay. Some questions about the community efforts. So the beehive fences that you guys are doing, which is incredible, and we all know the wonderful work of Dr. Lucy King. How does the community support themselves with the beehive fences? Like, is there starter money that you guys provide and then it's self-sustaining, or how does that work financially for them?
Right. Well, Elephant Crisis Fund supported this pilot. So we put in the fences, the hives, did all the training, did everything with financial support from Elephant Crisis Fund. We invited local people to join the training, and 7 additional farmers have now just got on and done it. So they now are not actually connecting the hives, but just placing the hives on their farms. And some of them aren't actually on the periphery of the forest, they're set back, so that's fine as well. Yeah, so we're looking to complete that hub. I have to say, we made a mistake. We didn't, on the poles, treat them well enough for termites. So one of the things that we now need to do, and we have the funding for it, is to replace the poles with properly impregnated poles, so they're not, they've basically been eaten in 3 years. So we've got to do that, and then we'll move on to supporting other farmers, mostly with training and capacity building. Other organizations, there's been some other funding for beehives as well. So we'll probably support those people with training because it's beekeeping is not straightforward.
No, there definitely is a lot more to it than just hanging some hives on some fencing.
There certainly is, but there is fortunately a strong tradition of beekeeping on Mount Elgon, typically using traditional hives in the forest. But a lot of people on Mount Elgon already understand bees.
That's great. So going off of the beehive fences, is there any plan to integrate other HEC mitigation techniques just in case the elephants
Yeah,
acclimate to the hives?
well, that is a good point, and indeed, we are warned by Elephant Crisis Fund that they do acclimatize, and hence you do need. So there has been a debate whether you can just leave the hives there and not connect them with wires. But we are told by Elephant Crisis Fund that the elephants will get wise to that and find their way between. The next major intervention, we wanted drones. And indeed, the Mara Elephant Project extensively used drones already. They've sent up one of their drone teams to evaluate Mount Elgon, which is even better suited to drones than the Mara. The Mara is a big open place where you can move around. Mount Elgon is hugely challenging just to move around. The topography and it's an incredibly wet place. So drones to basically drive the elephants out of people's farms is an intervention we're really interested in. And Mara have visited, evaluated, done recommendation, done budgeting, pricing. And so we're ready to go if we can find the money, and then there will have to be training and what have you. So that would be our next intervention, which then has other benefits as well for spotting charcoal burning, for PR. You get the most incredible nighttime infrared images of elephants moving around. So a number of other benefits if we can get hold of some money for the drones.
Excellent. Great. The chat loves hearing about the next steps. That's wonderful. And I think there's just one more question, unless people put more. So we've heard a lot from other presenters about elephants falling into wells and different things like that. Have you seen anything like that in the caves, or are they pretty good about where they place their feet?
Well, they are pretty good, but going back to my childhood, there was a baby elephant that fell down a crevasse in Kittim Cave and died. Now, if you go there, rocks have fallen down on top of it, but we know where the remains of that baby elephant is. So there is, historically been one death of an elephant in Kittim Cave. There has also been a baby elephant that fell into a human well and was rescued and was taken down to the Sheldrick Trust, but unfortunately it didn't survive. So those two baby elephants, I'm afraid, both didn't survive. So those are the only ones I'm aware of.
Well, it's incredible that with, however many years they've been doing this, there hasn't been more. So that's a testament to how good these elephants are at navigating.
Well, they navigate very carefully through Kittim Cave to the back. They know exactly where they're going.
Wonderful. One last question and then we'll wrap up because I know we're over time. Thanks everyone for staying with us. Do you have any idea what led the elephants bringing themselves from Kenya into Uganda? What drove that exploration?
Well, we can't put ourselves in the mind of an elephant, but I have got some good guesses. The first is that elephants are incredibly intelligent and they do remember. And it will be about now that the elephants that were alive at the time, they were all killed in Uganda. Well, some wouldn't have been killed, they would have probably been driven into Kenya. But the generation of elephants with the memory of what happened in Uganda will be dying out. So I think that's one important factor. Then on the Kenya side, we do believe the elephant population is significantly increasing. We don't have an accurate population measurement we don't know exactly how many elephants there are on the Kenya side, but they've spread to areas where they haven't been for years and years and years. We know that as a fact. Local people are all saying the number of elephants have gone up. So there's lots of evidence pointing to the herd size on the Kenya side increasing. And if you leave elephants alone, they will increase at 5–6% per annum. And we're not recording many elephant deaths at the moment. So that, all the evidence points to an increasing elephant population on the Kenya side, but also an increasing human population with increasing pressure on the forest. And so, if you're an elephant in a place with lots and more other elephants, and more human pressure, and there's this amazing big 1,100 square kilometers of former elephant montane forest over the border waiting for you. Why not go and have a little investigation? And so I think that's exactly what they did. There have been this series of little explorations on the northeast side, but also twice now on the west side as well. So watch this space, and I bet you within a few years, they'll be repopulating on the west side as well. Although there's a little complication there. There's a massive Great Gorge, but there are two natural bridges over that gorge which let the elephants go across. It's not like on the northern where they can just go through the river. So it's more complicated for them, but they've started going across those natural bridges in the west. And so I think we'll see it happen there soon as well. But who knows?
Wow. Okay. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap it up. Some nice hopeful predictions that we can have growing populations in Uganda. At this point, normally my colleague Julie would wrap up, but she had to run. So let's let everyone turn on your cameras and give Chris a big round of applause for this excellent presentation. I know everyone really enjoyed it, learned a lot. It's fantastic. So big round of applause for Chris.
All right. Well, sorry I've run over, and thank you so much indeed for inviting us to speak. And hopefully we'll get my German colleagues to come and talk to you about this fascinating elephant self-medication stuff.
Oh, we would love that. And along the same lines, our next conservation chat will be with Working Dogs for Conservation. We're going to learn about conservation dogs and the great work that they're doing on August 20th at 11 a.m. Central. So tune in, and of course, you'll all get emails from Julie. But thank you so much. This was fantastic, and you will all get the recording soon.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who's joined.
Thank you.